Hello. Dun, dun. Oh, right. Dun, dun. Okay, I think this is the crew tonight. The other guys and gals are out sick, I think. So we'll get into it. Um, Elizabeth, you were out last Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday,
Saturday.
Saturday. Were you able to watch the video and all that?
Yes, I'm going through it for the second time just to make sure I didn't miss any important details in my coding for VS Code. And
Okay.
I've already started homework, but I haven't completed homework yet.
Okay. But it's all making sense
Mhm.
for the most part. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Very good. There. Anyone have any questions about anything? Like, why'd you get into this crazy thing in the first place? All good. Okay. All right. Where's my button? I hate when they like remove buttons when your screen is smaller, but don't like say, hey, it's over here if you need it. It's annoying. Developers, what can you do? Okay. All right. We'll jump right into it. So this week we're going to talk about conditionals and functions. We talked a little bit about functions on Saturday, so we'll get more into that. Um, and then yeah, we'll get into if else and switch statements. So a lot of fun stuff. We talked a little bit about conditionals as well. So if you remember, the single equals is an assignment operator, right? So if we do like, let me bring this over here. If we're creating a variable called Taco Bell, and we want to assign a value to it, so let's just say the string Taco Bell, whatever. just one equal sign, right? So that's going to assign that value, that string Taco Bell, to the variable Taco Bell. If we want to see, so if we have this variable Taco Bell, and then we have a variable called Taco Bueno, um, we'll set it's Taco Bueno. Bueno. My wife's in the background laughing at me. I can hear her. So if we want to see if these are equal, we can just do so we'll do an if statement. We'll get into that in a second, but we'll just say if, well, actually, I think we just say Taco Bell, Taco Bell. Oop, stop it. Taco Bell equals Taco Bell. Yeah, so it's going to tell us, or Taco Bueno. So you can see it's already telling us at the bottom that this is false, right? Because the strings Taco Bell and string Taco Bueno are not the same, right? They do not, they're not the same thing. So, but if we change this to Taco Bell, then it's true, right? Because the strings are the same. This is the not strict comparison though. So it's not going to check the type. It's only going to check the what it's actually set to. So for instance, if we were to change it to, let's make it make more sense. So we'll say 5, the number 5 double equals the string 5. It's going to tell us true because the double equals is not comparing that type. So it's not looking at string 5 versus number 5. It's just looking at 5 and 5. Okay. So that's why we always say to use the triple equals when you do comparisons for the most part, because it's going to check that type. So if we did 5 triple equals 5 string 5, it's going to give us false, right? The same is true, as we can see here, with the not equals operator. So for not, you have the bang or the exclamation point and then the equal signs. So let me clear this. Clear. Oh, I don't want to clear that. Okay. The triple equals and not equals is actually just 2 equals, but it's got the bang there. So if we did 5 not equal to string 5, nope, there we go. So it's going to say false here, right? Because it's not checking that type. So it's saying that number 5 is equal to string 5, right? So they are not equal, just to get your brain around that. But if we change this to a triple equals, or 2 in this case, then it's going to say true. These number 5 does not equal string 5. That is true. Okay. And sometimes you got to talk about those in your head and write it down because you're like, is it not equals? And it gets all crazy. So, yeah, okay. So that is triple and or equals and not equals, and then we have greater than, less than, and then greater than or equal to, and less than or equal to, just like high school math, right? Or maybe middle school math nowadays. I don't know. They're doing the same thing. I don't know. Well, I guess it wouldn't matter. Yeah. So these last 4 type doesn't matter, right? Because we're just going to say, is it greater than or equal to? Yeah. Okay. Questions on that? Getting dry? Okay. All right, cool. So these are comparison operators, which kind of brings us into logical operators. So there is, in JavaScript, there is truthy and there is falsy. Okay. So whenever you're doing a comparison, you're trying to figure out, okay, is it truthy or is it falsy? And some things are kind of weird. Like I think null is truthy, or an empty string. Oh, an empty string is truthy. Let's see, if I just do empty string, it's not going to tell me. Okay. But yeah, so we'll get into that later. But yeah, so true. So the and is our logical operator. In this case, we're doing and, which is double ampersand, and then or, which is 2 of the pipes, which those are right above your enter key, if you've never used that before. And then, of course, the bang, as we just discussed, means not. So if we have kind of the same thing we had earlier, if we have Let's do Taco Bell again. I don't think it keeps it when I clear it. Let's see if it does. Okay, it does. No, it doesn't. Wait, what did I say? Oh, because I didn't return anything. But yeah, it did Taco Bell the string. So okay, so we can say Taco Bell. Uh, wait, no, that's not gonna work. Okay, if we had two truthy things, right? But it's a string, so it doesn't matter. So basically if you're doing an if statement, if Taco Bell triple equals Taco Bell, and so double ampersand Taco Bueno equals Taco Bueno. Should have picked shorter words. Okay, so if this is saying both of these have to be true, right, for it to do anything. So basically, it's Taco Bell, the string Taco Bell equal to Taco Bell, and Taco Bueno, Taco Bueno. So if both are true, then it's going to go ahead and do whatever is in your if block. If one of them is false, then cuts it out. It short circuits it. It's going to go to your else if you have an else. And then the same, or actually the opposite with or. So if we had or here, which is the double pipe, so this is going to be one of them has to be true. Doesn't matter if it's the first or the last, just one of them has to be true for it to um, go into that if statement. And then the not is just, yeah, it's just not true or not false. So not true is false, not false is true, right? So that'll make a lot more sense when you get back into it. Hang on a second, sorry.
Sorry, let me go to the gym, and
Okay.
I'm gonna take the clicker out of your car so I can just park in the garage when I
Sure.
can.
All right, bye.
So sorry, everybody. Love you, buddy.
All right, sorry about that. You'll have to see real life. Okay. Okay, here we go. So truthy and false values. Oh yeah, so here's what I was talking about earlier. So false is falsy, obviously, right? Zero is a false value. A lot of times when you do comparisons, like you'll have like flags in your database, and a flag just means it's either one or zero. So it'll be like, um, I don't know, is visible, right? You'd have like an is visible column, and you would say either zero or one. One being true, zero being false. Okay, empty strings are, does it give me falsy? Might be falsy. Yeah, null is false, undefined false, and then not a number is false. So empty strings are false. Yeah. So I had that one backwards. Everything else is truthy. So the string zero, truthy. String false, truthy. An empty array is truthy, and an empty object is also truthy, which is weird. And this is where some people are like JavaScript is stupid because it has these really weird kind of falsy truthy things. The ones that I would say have caught me in the past, probably the objects one is, because a lot of times you could say something um, like if the object is true, right? So if the object is empty or whatever, then do this thing. But if you just said if like empty object like this with the brackets, it's gonna do a true, right? But you were looking for a false. So there's this thing called is empty or is object empty that you can use. But some of those will trip you up. Most of the time, it's okay. But definitely something to keep in mind.
I got a question. Why
Yeah,
would
yeah.
we use an empty object?
Say it again.
Why would we use an empty object? I'm not
Um,
really understanding the truthy and falsely.
mhm.
I
Yeah.
don't really understand what is that.
So
Can
whenever
you
we
give
do
an example?
conditionals down here, we're gonna use if else, right? And so basically, if this is true, whatever this evaluates to is true or truthy, then this is gonna happen, and then so on and so on. So
Mhm.
this is where we'll use it. Um, the the truthy falsy thing is it's really because like if we think of things that like in black and white, right? Like it is true or it is false. It's not that way in JavaScript. Some things you would assume are false, like the number zero or the string zero, you would assume is false. but it's not, you know. To answer your object question, a lot of times we'll build an object as we go. So if you can imagine, maybe we're making like a shopping list or something. So we'll initialize an empty object, and then as the person is putting things in their cart, we will fill up that object, like as they're doing it. Make sense?
I mean, it does, but I don't, in that example, I don't understand how that connects to the truthy falsity.
Well, the object one doesn't. That's just about filling it up. But yeah, it's so if we do, let's see if I give us a good example here. That's a switch. Yeah. It's just when we get into the conditionals, you got to make sure because if like let's say okay, let's say you were taking a person's age in, right? And you did not want them to be able to put in 0, right? But you didn't like they put in 0 in your form, and when your form came to your back end, it came as a string because that's how forms work. You would have the string 0, right? Which you're just checking, is this 0? And then if it's the string 0, it would actually be true instead of false. And so if in that you're trying to say, hey, you can't use the 0, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it would, knowing that this is truthy in JavaScript is you're gonna put a check in there to make sure it's turned into a number before you then go and check it.
Okay.
Does that help at all a little bit?
A little bit.
Okay.
I think I'll get it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's just it's weird in JavaScript, and as you go on, you'll be like, oh, okay, I need to be more careful when I'm looking at empty objects, or make sure it is a number, it's not an and, not a number. Just things that you'll come into and be like, that bug is so stupid, and then you'll be like, oh, it's because of this thing, right?
Okay.
Help a little bit.
Yeah.
Cool. Anybody else? Good for now. Okay. All right. Okay, and it does give kind of example here. So we're saying if the string hello, right? So is the string hello true or false? Like just thinking about it, you're like, what do you mean is it true or false? It's a string hello. But strings are truthy. Empty strings are falsy. So this would run because the string hello is truthy. Okay. And so we say truthy and falsy because saying it's true is just weird, right? Because it's not specifically true, but it is a truthy, it evaluates truthy. And then the same down here with the 0, this would not run because 0 is falsy. Now, if this was a string 0, then it would run. Okay. All right. So,
Oh, sorry to interrupt, but
oh,
going back to Wayne's question, it took me a second to really think about it, but one of the reasons why like an empty object would come back truthy is like, for instance, if you were like making a call to an API and it returned a empty object, you would still want it to show that it was a truthy value. So that way, instead of like a null or something, to show that even though the object was empty, it still returned a valid object. Because sometimes you might query something and it might return values, but it might not, just because there are no values to return, but it still returned a valid object. Something it returned essentially what it was supposed to return.
yeah. So it's not an error. It returned something, so it's not an error. So you would then say, oh, okay, this is an empty object. Hey, user, there was nothing to return. Instead of saying like, hey, user, there's an error.
Okay. Yeah, no.
Cool. Thanks, Eric.
Of course.
All right. So conditionals. Conditionals are fun because they can get way out of hand. And then there's fun ways to fix that then can get way out of hand. So super fun. But basically, you're looking at if, else if, and then else. So it just starts with if this is true, then we're going to run what's in it, right? And then if this is not true, we're going to go down the line. So then if it's not true, we're going to say, okay, is this true? If this is true, cool, we're going to run this thing. And then so on and so on until you get to where you don't have any more like conditionals here, and then it'll run the else. Okay. And so if we think about if this is inside a function, actually, I'll just write a function real quick and show you. New file. Okay. So if I had a function, function, oh my goodness. Okay, whatever. And I wanted to return an let's say I wanted to return a Boolean, right? I'm going to say return bool. Okay. Boolean is true or false, if you remember. And I'm going to pass a number into it, right? So I'm going to just get a number. So remember, this is a parameter right here, which is just kind of a little temporary variable to hold what we're going to pass into it. And what we pass in is the argument. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if the number is greater than 0, then I want to set my bool variable to true, right? And then I'm going to return that bool. Okay, and then I want to say else bool is false. Okay. So the syntax for it, as I blew through it real quick, was it's if and then just like a function, right? It's got your parentheses and then your curly brackets. So it is not a function, remember that, but has the same kind of syntax as a function. And so then if I were to call this, whatever, with a positive number, we'll say 20. I wonder if it'll let me run that here. I don't know if it's going to do a node for me. I'm going to find out. Well, it didn't do anything. Oh, because I did not console log anything. Oh, let me store that. But it is positive equal, and then console.log. It's possible. Okay, so what it did was it took 20, right? So there's our argument, and it passed it into this function, whatever, which is here. So it took it in, stored in that little number variable. And then when it got in here, it said, okay, is that number, so 20, right? Is it greater than 0? If it is, then set this bool variable to true. Else, so if it's not, then false, right? And so when we logged it, we returned the bool, which is what came out of here, and stored in this variable. So we logged that to show the answer there of true, right? So if I were to change this to negative 20 and then run it, so now it's false, right? Because the negative 20 came in there, went down here, checked, is it greater than? No, it's not. Okay, we're going to our else. Okay. And then we can expand upon that and put an else if inside. And you can have as many else ifs as you want. And that's where it gets hairy because you might have, like, let's say you were looking for, like, if it's a certain letter in the alphabet or something, like you'd have 23 or however many letters are in an alphabet, else ifs, right? Or if else ifs. So it could get a little crazy. But let's say here, so now we'll do like is greater than 0 and, so we can use our logical operators, and number is less than 9. And then we can say else if number is greater than or equal to 9, and number is less than or less than 20, we'll say. And then else is going to be false. So obviously this doesn't make much sense with the true false thing, but kind of get the gist here. Actually, we'll be crazy and we'll set it to string true just for fun. See what we get. So if we pass in -20, we should expect to get false still, right? So let's see if we do. We do. And if we pass in +20, then what would we expect to get if it was +20?
True.
String true or Boolean true?
Oh, string true.
So it would go in here. So
Yeah.
if number is greater than or equal to 9 and number is less than 20,
Okay. False.
false. Let's see. False. So if we did 19, then we should probably see this guy, right?
Mhm.
Okay. It is that guy. We did you can tell the color difference, right? The yellow in this case. This is a VS Code thing. Yellow means Boolean, white means string. So then if we change it to 9, it's still going to give us here, right? Because we're greater than or equal to. Yep. And then let's go 8. And we get that guy back. Cool. Make sense? Pretty good. Okay. Cool. All right. Back to this. All right. So I was talking about the ABCs thing. That's where like a switch statement could come in. A switch statement is very similar to to an if else, except for basically you pass in a parameter kind of thing, and then you're gonna check if it equals a bunch of different cases or one of a bunch of different cases. And if it does, then you're going to do something in there, and then so on, and then they have a default, which is like an else. So basically, it's almost the same functionality. Um, just instead of like having an else if for like each different one, you're just going to have a thing that it might be equal to. So in this case, they're passing in food or category, which is this string food, right? And so it's going to say, okay, what does category equal, right? And so of course it'd be the first one in this case. But it would go through and it'd say, okay, case, if it's food, I'm going to do this thing. And then I'm breaking out, which just means I'm leaving the switch statement. But if food wasn't the top one, like it would go through and say, okay, is it this one? Okay, it's not. Let's go on to the bottom until there was none that matched, and then it would do the default thing. It says here, don't forget the break, because if you without the break, it will just keep going, right? And this is something we'll use in functions as well. We've used the return keyword so far to return out of a function. You can also use the break if you're using a loop inside a function, which we'll get into loops next week, I think. And I don't know, Derek. I have maybe used switch once or twice in my career. Haven't used it a whole lot.
Uh, yeah, I used it a couple of times. I haven't used it very often myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was one of those things they put in JavaScript and it may be in other languages where they were like, hey, this is a super awesome thing that everyone's going to use. And then we're like, yeah, but it's kind of hairy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that brings me to the ternary operator. The ternary, when I was in my coding boot camp and I saw this thing, blew my mind. I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I guess I'm easily impressed. I don't know. But what the ternary does is it takes your if else statement and it puts it in one line, right? And you can have multiple ternaries in the same line, but that's where that gets hairy because it can get kind of confusing. But basically what it is so we have this age variable, right, that has 20 in it. And we're going to say, we're going to store something in the status variable. So basically we're saying if age is greater than or equal to 18, then we're going to bring back adult, right? And then if it's not, we're going to bring back minor. And so you can think of this question mark like your if, okay? So this is saying if this is true, this is the one you want. If it's not, so the colon is like your else. If it's not, then bring back this one. And so that's what status will have in it. So like it says here, it's the same as this if else statement here. It's just in one line, much cleaner looking, easier to understand. The problem though, like I said, let me show you. If we get into let's say it's probably a bad example. Let's say let's letter equal well, I need a bunch of variables. So pretend I had a bunch of variables like let's go let a equal a dun, dun. Nope. Dun, 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 dun. Oops. Okay. So we'll do like let a if a equals a, then return a. I don't know. Else if b or actually else if b equals a. Nope. B equals a, then return B. Obviously, this makes no sense at all, right? But the point being, you can like chain them together like this, and then we can just do like C. And so this would say, okay, if A equals string A, you're going to return this guy. If not, then check if B equals the string A, and then return this guy. If not, just return this guy. And you could string that along forever, and it would be completely unreadable and horrible. So no, like I was super excited about ternaries when I learned about them, and I was like, I'm stringing everything together, and then I had no idea what was going on. So they're super cool to use, super nice for inline, like quick comparisons. But if it's more than like two things, an if else is going to be much more readable. So just to throw that in there. Does it make sense how they work though, with a question mark and the colon? Pretty good. Okay. All right. All right. Okay, numbers. We talked about this already, just some of the methods on numbers, like the two fixed, we know gives us the 2 decimal points. Parse int is going to take a string, turn it into a number. Parse float's going to do the same thing, but with a decimal, a floating, it's called a floating point number. Math.round, these are pretty cool, especially if you make a game and you need like whole numbers for like I don't know points, HP, timers, like anything like that. Like if your monster has this hit percentage and they hit by this or whatever, it's probably gonna end up being a decimal at some point. So you can use math.round and math.floor. Well, you can use math.round is going to round it up to the nearest number. Math.floor is going to round it down to the nearest number, right? So you think about the floor. And then math.ceiling is going to take it up. Sorry, I said round wrong. Round is going to round it like you would expect. So if it's like 4.3, it's going to go to 4. If it's 4.7, it's going to go to 5, right? Floor is going to take it to the floor no matter what. So like it says here, 4.9 is still going to give you 4. And then seal for ceiling is going to take it up no matter what. So 4.1 will give you 5. Max and min, I don't think I've used them a whole lot, but I think it just compares these two numbers. And so it's, I think you're saying you want one value back and you're going to get the max of those two, maybe. We'd have to throw that in Claude to find out. Trying to think of when. I don't think I've ever used them. Derek, have you ever used those?
No, not outside of leak code type
Right.
questions.
Okay. Okay. If y'all don't know what leak code is, it's like a practice algorithm thing you can do for well, you can do it for fun, but you can do it for like practicing for interviews and things like that. And it just gives you like very, like build this weird thing that no one will ever use, but will help you with coding. So cool. Yeah, so floor, ceiling, and round definitely have used. The other two, um, not so much. But you may. Like just because we haven't used them does not mean, you won't come across these things. Because there's obviously a lot of different jobs out there. Okay. Kind of flew through that before we get into functions. Questions on any of that? It's okay. Cool. All right. Sweet. Okay, functions. Functions are the lifeblood of JavaScript. They are our little like factories that will do all of our stuff for us. Um, they make it great because without functions, like you just have this giant sheet of code that's not contained like within itself and have things inside of it, and everything would run every single time. And you would have no way of like reusing things at all. So they're very, very awesome, very helpful, and sometimes very confusing. So to declare them, there's a couple ways. Um, don't worry too much about like the syntax of the different ways right now. We'll go through it, but really the main one, just this one right here, function, the name of the function, parentheses, curly brackets. Like that's your main thing. You can use this. Using the other ones does not is not any better than using this. It's just different syntax um, that does the exact same thing. There's one little caveat, but it doesn't matter that much right now anyway. So for most of your career, you can definitely just use this. I still use this, and it's just fine. So yeah, so it's function keyword, the name of the function, which when you're naming a function, you want to try to make it make sense. If you say function X, nobody's going to know what that does. I have a tendency to have really long function names, which is fine. It just is they're really long. We're not in a world which you have to worry about memory very much anymore, especially not with like a function name. So yeah, it's fine. Just make it descriptive. It doesn't have to be super long, but it needs to someone should be able to read your code and be like, okay, this is what this function does. So um, so this one says function greet. Okay, it's going to be a greeting. Maybe it could have been named better, but simple, easy function, no worries. Cool. So inside the function is what's gonna happen. If you want that to affect outside of the function, you've got to return something. You could definitely have a function that doesn't return anything. If it's doing, like, let's say it's updating your database or whatever, maybe you just like, I don't know, maybe you have like age and you're going through and checking everyone's birthday and updating their age to match whatever their birthday is. Like you don't need to return all of that to the user or to anybody. So you may not return anything. You may return just a success message and say, hey, this worked. But there are times when you may not need to return anything. So if you are going to return anything, then that's where the return word comes in. This will short circuit your function. So if you have a conditional, so let's say you had the score here inside your function, if like right here you had return instead of console.log or in addition to, it's going to return right there outside your functions. Your function is going to stop at that point, which is you'll do that a lot whenever you're just like if you're going through the function to find whatever like even number or above a certain age or whatever it is, you will return out of it. To call your function or invoke your function, you just use your function name and then the parentheses. You don't always have to have arguments and parameters. I think we had one on Saturday where the variable was global, so we could just use it inside the function. We didn't have to pass it to the function, and that's perfectly fine. Um, so yeah, definitely not required to have the parameter and arguments. We'll get into this probably later, but you can also have default parameters and optional parameters, which you'll put those in the same way. The only difference is one will end in a question mark if it's optional, and the other one, if it's default, it'll have like name equals the string Tommy or something. And so then if you don't pass that in as an argument, it's going to default to whatever it is that you gave it there, if it's the default one. Cool. The other ways you can have them is you can use arrow functions. You'll use these more when we get to React. They do the exact same thing. It just gives you, it looks like a variable, right? Instead of a function, really, because you're giving it a const greet. And then this equals, and we call this the fat arrow, this little equals and arrow. But it's doing the same thing. You're passing in the parameter. It's returning the thing. You would still call it just by saying greet with your parentheses. So no different. There's this whole ES6, ES5 thing, which is just standards, right? Different, you could say kind of like versions of JavaScript where they bring these in to make things look cleaner and move faster. But again, just stick with this guy and you're gonna be just fine. Okay. And Derek, yeah, when Derek teaches React, he can tell you more about that stuff. All right. Okay, we talked a little bit about parameters. This is an example of a default parameter that I was saying. Like you could give it equals whatever. And then if you just call greet without passing anything, it's just going to use your default parameter in there. And then if you do pass it something, it will override that default. So some common mistakes, if you did need a value out of there and you did not put a return, like this function is going to run and it's going to add 2 and 3 together right here, but it's not, then it's done, right? Because you didn't tell it you actually want to get a value back like it does down here. So it's still going to run. It's just not, you're going to see nothing, right? It's just going to be like, okay, I'm done. So you got it. So, and you'll do this. We've all done it. You'll write a function and then nothing will happen and you forgot your return. Other things about functions. I mentioned hoisting on Saturday. So when I first started, I was uber organized, right? I wanted to be so organized with everything. So I would like make huge comments and say, this is my function section and this is my, like page load section or whatever it was. And it's fine to be that way, but just know that it doesn't matter where you put the functions. They're going to be hoisted or pulled up to the top of your JavaScript file. If you can imagine it, like they're physically not, but that way you can access them anywhere within that JavaScript file. So if you have like a loading, an onload event, which we'll get into events later, and in that onload event, you are calling some functions that are below it, that's perfectly fine because it's getting hoisted up. You're getting pulled up and then you can just use them anywhere. Outside of functions, everything is, like inline from top to bottom. I think that's it on functions. Any questions on that? Does it make sense a little bit?
I actually do have a question.
Yeah.
I think I'm having a little bit of trouble with the return
Good.
because I feel like shouldn't the return be okay? So like you see the one for under arrows functions.
Uh-huh.
This is just for an example. So when you hit type return, I feel like shouldn't it just be like return greet instead of return and then spelling out hello plus name?
Well, so they want it. So the greet is the function name.
Okay.
Yeah, so you'll call greet like here with greet Alice.
Uh,
So the return is going to be the value that you want to return out of that function.
okay.
Yeah. So
Okay, that
this,
makes sense.
okay, cool. Yeah. So this would be hello, and then if it's Alice, Alice is what would be returned.
Okay.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. It is like confusing because there's so much like you think about variables. Okay, do I want to return this variable, but it looks sort of like a function name here. So definitely it's all combobbled until until you start writing it and kind of feeling it and stuff. So it's yeah. JavaScript is I love it so much because it hurts. It's like it hurts to get it, and then once it clicks, it's so satisfying, you know. Like if I don't know if like for sports people, if you've like trying to hit that home run and you keep missing or whatever, and then you like hit it, I don't know. That's my thing. I'm not a sports person, so I don't know. But yeah, so don't yeah, this is good questions. Okay. Scope. So we talked a little bit about scope as well. Um, anything that's in your file, your JavaScript file, that is not inside of a function is going to be in the global scope, right? So global just means like your entire file. Okay. And so it can be accessed anywhere in your file, inside of functions, outside of functions, anywhere. Um, that's okay for some variables, like if you want say you want the user's name, right? So they filled out a form and you want their name and you want to be able to use that in a bunch of different functions. And that's okay. You can have a global variable, call it name, put their name in there or whatever. But let's say you had let's say it's a game, well, it's a game and you had the score and you only wanted to be able to add up the score within your like calculate score function, right? um, you would want to have a score variable just inside your function, right? And then you may have like total score outside your function as global, but the one inside your function, you don't want that messed with anywhere else, right? Because you need to contain it to that function so it won't get messed up. And so that would be called function scope, right? So it's in that function instead of global scope where anybody can mess with it. Yeah, so and they use the word local here, so it's a local variable to that function. Function variable is how I've always heard it said. Um, so also you can see here that they're console logging them and they're console logging the global one and it works just fine because it's in the global scope. And then they try to console log the local one and it doesn't work because it's only accessible within the function in which it's declared, right? So you declared it here in this function. So you can access it here just fine, but you can't access it outside. And then you can see you can access the global one inside the function and outside the function. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay. Yeah, not much more to say about scope on that. Nope. Okay. Cool. So for our expense tracker, we will I think we did a little bit of no, we did uh currency formatting. We did formatting, we didn't do validation. So we'll do some validations probably right here, right now. And then I want to go over this real quick, some common mistakes. So again, the equals, remember single equals is um, assigning the value, so assignment, not comparison. Triple equals or double um, is comparison. And I think there's one time in my career that I've used a double on purpose. So really stick with triple if you can. And you should be able to. You should be just fine. Because it'll bite you the other way, right? If you're trying to compare 5 with string 5 with 2 equals, then you're gonna have problems. And then this is just saying forgetting that return. So this is an inline function, how you can draw one or write one, but Same thing with the function that we're writing. Just remember the return if you do want something returned. And then with a switch statement, the values have to match. So if you are taking in a value, like say someone passed food and it was like all uppercase and you wanted it to match like a lowercase food, you need to do that whenever you're taking it in. But that's the same in any conditional, like really with anything, if you're comparing it, make sure that case matches, right? Because case is going to matter. So uppercase, lowercase. Cool. Okay. Let's see. Oh, that's not it. Wrong one. Let me. I'm going to bring up our expense from last week. Let's see. Okay. So we had this expense tracker, right? And we made we put our functions down here at the bottom. So yeah, we had our date formatting and we had our currency formatting, and then we had our total. So this is saying to make a validate function. So validate the expense. So we'll get into this weekend because we're going to make a form and actually have, be able to submit expenses. But if we just think about it currently, let's just think if we have our expenses, whoa, I'll just grab this one for fun. I'm just going to call it expense. So if we have a validate function, right? So if we do function validate expense, what should go here in the parentheses?
Is it 450?
The dollar amount?
Yeah.
Nope. So
Okay.
this will be whatever we're going to take in and we want to validate. So we're going to validate the whole expense object, not just the amount. So that's kind of confusing, right? That is the way it's worded. But we'll take in the whole. I'm just going to put obj for object. Actually, I'll just put expense. So we're going to want to take in all of this, and basically what we're going to do, probably should have explained this better before I asked the question. We're just going to make sure that description is a string and that amount is a number and that category is a string and that date is a date. Okay. So we'll take in this whole expense. Okay. So I'm just going to console log. I always like to, when I write a function, just console log it just so I can kind of see what's coming in there. So I'll just console log expense. Oops. Expense. And then I'll just call it right below it here. So validate expense. And we're going to pass in, I'm going to call this temp expense so we're not confused with all the expenses running around. So we'll pass in temp expense, right? So what we're doing is we're taking this whole object and we're going to pass it into this variable so we can then validate what the different key values are. Okay. So if we look at our browser, then we can see here, right? This is our expense that we're taking in. So we know we're getting those things in there. So I'm gonna call this temp expense well, actually it's just expense because it's coming directly from here. Okay. So what we'll want to do is we'll want to know, we'll want to check description and see if it is a string, right? Because we don't want someone putting in a weird number or even like some malicious code or anything like that. So we can use our if statement here and say if expense dot description, because remember in an object, it's the name of the object. So in this case, expense, right? Because that's that temporary variable holding this temp expense. The name of the object dot the key, right, is going to give us that value of coffee. Okay. So if we were to console log right here, if we did expense dot description and dot description, description. See, it's even trying to help us here, tell us what it is. Then we're going to see coffee instead of the whole thing. So I can show you that right there, right? Cool. Okay. And remember this little tag that I put on the front, this does not have to be expense.description. This could be whatever you want it to be that helps you make sense of what the variable next to it is. And you don't even have to have it at all. It's just there to be helpful. So don't let it eat your brain. I tried to teach my wife to code and she was not getting this, and it's almost our first fight, but we made it. But yeah, so just know that this is just for you, right? It's not for anybody else. Okay. All right. So if expense.description, and we want to see if it's a string. So in order to see the type of something, there is a keyword called type of that we can put before it, just like that. So you do type of, and then whatever it is, the type of you're trying to find. And then you can see if that equals, and then you can put string in a string. Okay. So this is how you check the type of something. And then if it is, then we don't really care, right? That's fine. But if it's not, then we want something to happen. So we're going to say not equals string. And we're going to need obviously the bang plus the two equal signs, because we are checking type, right? And because you shouldn't do it any other way. Okay. So if it is not a string, we're going to want to tell the user, hey, this needs to be a string. So in this case, we can return, and we're just going to say expense description. Let's just say description is not let's say must be a string. Okay. So this will come out as description. This is what it will return, is this string here. Okay. And then we can, so you don't have to have an else when you're doing an if. It is highly encouraged to have one so that you do have a fallback in case whatever it is doesn't work, but it is not required. In this case, we could put an else on here, but there's nothing really we need to do. We just need to keep going, right? So we could just console log something or whatever, or we could just leave it off. This would not be an else if, because we only have one thing to check, right? Is it a string or is it not? Like that's all we need to know right now. So we're just going to add another if. And so this is completely separate from the first if. Okay, so these are not together. These are two separate conditionals. And we're going to say is if expense dot amount, we need our type of here. Actually, we can use our nan. So we can do nan. I think it's nan. Is it that? That may be the way to use it. We'll see if that works. That might not work. But we want to know if it is not a number, then basically the same thing. We're going to return that amount must be a number. That one might come back to bite us, but we'll see in just a second. And I'm just going to do those two since we only got 4 minutes left. And we will see if it works. So let's go. We are passing in this. We do have let's make this not a string so we can get our thing. I'm going to make it just a Boolean. And then this is a float, so I'm interested to see what happens here. Let's see what we get. Let's refresh. Okay. So it did not do anything. It did something, but we didn't show it because we returned these, but we didn't store them anywhere, right? And we didn't console log them. So this is returning from our function, but we didn't say, hey, I actually want to keep that information, right? So we can make this a variable. Let's just call it returned. Set it equal, and then we'll console log whatever that is. Returned. Okay. So there we go. Let me, just to make that more clear, I'm going to put a fat arrow here just so you can see it better. Okay. So we returned description, which I just realized I spelled wrong, must be a string, right? Because the description we passed was not a string. Okay. So it did catch it in our if there. So if we make this back to coffee, then we shouldn't see that one again. So let's see. Okay, cool. So we got an error, but that's okay. So description is coffee is a string. So we didn't get that first if. We did get a type error because I used nan wrong, which is fine. What we can do is we can parse float it since it is a float and not an integer. And we can say parse float. So if we parse float it, and then we can check. Oh, how do we do this? Let's see this. Let's see if we can do this way. Equals number. Let's see. I don't know if that'll work. Okay. So it says amount must be a number, right? So we parsed it as a float, which is not a number. It's a float, I think. I may be just going down a path here, but we'll see. Well, anyway, out of time. But point being, this is kind of how we're going to begin to set up that validate. We're just going to validate that they are the actual types that they need to be. We may, for amount, we probably would validate that it's above 0, right? Because we don't want them putting negative numbers in there. And then we do the other ones as well. But that is the gist. The debug and read code are on the deal in Slack right here for you. You can check those out. I feel bad that I go through this so fast, but it's just so short a time. Questions? No? All good. Is it kind of making sense? Because JavaScript is not easy, so hopefully it's getting there. Okay.
I'm getting there. Just need more time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is as you do it it just comes with practice and hitting your head and taking a walk and coming back and yeah.
Blocked off Friday.
Good.
Try to work on these stuff.
Cool. All right. Well, got nothing else, then I'll see y'all Saturday.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Later, Derek.